There is a fifth dimension, beyond that which is known to man. It is a dimension as vast as space and as timeless as infinity. It is a middle ground between light and shadow, between science and superstition, and it lies between the pit of man's fears and the summit of his knowledge. This is a dimension of imagination. It is an area which we call the Twilight Zone. Hey guys, Alf here. I'm back with another episode of Analyzing the Twilight Zone, and we're on episode 6 of season 1. This one was directed by Mitchell Leisen. I think that's how you say it. Leisen? And this one was written by Rod Serling. Can't say I really like this episode. It's alright, but it's one of the weaker ones for sure. It's just kind of, it's not very deep. There's not much to it. But the story is an older guy. He's in a hypochondriac, and it starts off in his bed. And there's a doctor there making a house call, checking him all, giving him a full physical, checking everything about him. And, and the guy's like, all right, tell me, doc, what's wrong with me? Thinking he's going to die or whatever. And the doctor's like, nothing. You're completely healthy. You got a clean bill of health. There's nothing wrong with you at all. And he's like, well, what about all these aches and pains? And, I'm always feeling like crap and dying, sick and stuff. And doctor's like, yeah, that's psychosomatic, that's all in your head. And the guy doesn't believe him. He's like, what? That's all in my head. He's like, yeah, you're so afraid of dying that you're making yourself feel like you're sick all the time and that you're about to die. And that's the only problem you got going on. As long as you don't, freak out about thinking you're about to die, you'll start feeling better, And the guy's like, whatever, you're a quack or whatever, starts kicking him out. Tells him he can leave or whatever. Not kick him out, but, he tells him like, all right, we're done. You can go. So as the doctor's walking out, the guy's wife starts talking to the doctor, and the guy, you already see right off the beginning that the guy's kind of a douchebag to his wife. Now, he could have always been an asshole. I don't know if that's the case, but maybe it's just, him, the way he is now, that's turning him into an asshole. He always thinks he's gonna die. He's always telling his wife, oh, there's a draft in here, close the door, or, oh, I'm thirsty, bring me some water, so basically making him serve her and shit. And there's a part where she's like, saying, like, when the doctor's telling him that, he's fine, there's a part where she's like, oh, see, you're okay. And then he's like, oh, see, she can't wait for me to pass on or something like that, So he's just a complete asshole. His wife hangs on him hand and foot, and he treats her like a piece of shit and thinks that she's waiting for him to die and shit. So the wife talks to the doctor secretly before he leaves, and she's like, oh, what's really wrong with him? Because, she thinks maybe the doctor's lying to him, so she doesn't tell him. But the doctor's like, nah, he's the healthiest patient I have. He's like, there's really nothing wrong with him at all. And she's like, oh, and then he's like, but you look a little pale, because she's like been working hard waiting on her husband hand and foot. And he's like, here, let me prescribe you some vitamins. While she's doing that, the husband yells like, oh, there's a draft in here, please close the door, window. And she's like, I'll be right there. Meanwhile, he could have gotten up and closed the window himself. He's perfectly healthy, but he still thinks he's dying, so he won't get out of the bed. And, he's calling for her to close the window in his room where he's laying. But, yeah, the doctor leaves. And he goes to the mirror, and he's like looking at himself, and he's like, doctor doesn't know what he's talking about. I'm dying. And then, he starts lamenting about like, oh, why do people have to die and this and that? Why do we have to keep getting older? And, why can't we just live forever? And then, magically some guy appears in his room, chubby guy with a suit, starts talking to him and telling him, well, maybe you can live forever, maybe for a certain trade. And, then we get into the classic, sell your soul to the devil for immortality. That's basically it. And they talk about, what's 100 years, what's an extra 1,000 years, whatever. It doesn't, it's a blink of an eye. It doesn't matter. We'll give you that. And just for the teeny weeny little price of your soul that, you won't miss it at all. And, and he's telling him, well, if you live forever, you're not going to miss your soul at all, right? What do you need it for? So, they make a deal, and the deal is basically he gets to live forever until he decides he doesn't want to live anymore. That's what the deal is. And it's not just like you can't die from old age. You can't die from, being hurt or anything like that. So, the deal sounds sweet to him. He's like, yeah, I'm in for it, and then he does figure out, and he tells him that, he's like, wait a minute, you're the devil, and he's like, well, I go by many names. So basically the other guy who calls himself Mr. Cadwallader is the devil. Yeah, so they make this deal. Afterwards, The guy now, he's completely different attitude. He's all like bubbly and he's like, "Yeah, I'm ready to reach the day," and he goes out. And now what he starts doing is, since he has no more fear of death, he starts looking for cheap thrills. And in so does things that would normally kill him, right? Jump in front of a train, jump in front of a bus, jump off buildings, drink poison, shit like that. So he keeps doing things, it escalates and he does things that are more and more dangerous that would cause more and more damage to him that, comes out of them unscathed all the time. His suit's getting more and more ripped up and dirty. And meanwhile, he's collecting insurance from these companies, right? Because he's got insurance. So he's jumping in front of the train. The train insurance company comes by. They got to give him another one. Is a bus insurance company. They got to come. They give him a cup of money, and he's collecting money from all these accidents he's getting into that he's not even getting hurt. They're not giving him the full amount because he's not getting hurt. So they're like, "Oh, I think this is a fair amount." And he's like, "All right, all right." He's like, "You're not even bruised. Like this got to be a fair amount." And he's like, all right, I'll take it." So at some point, his wife is getting really worried. Obviously, he's constantly getting into these accidents, and she's like, "What's going on? I'm afraid you're gonna hurt yourself, this and that." So he kind of explains it to her that he can live, that he's basically immortal and he can't be hurt and this and that, and but he starts talking about how there's no enjoyment now because nothing is thrilling. You know what I'm saying? He knows he can't get hurt, so nothing, any risk he takes, there's no thrill to it anymore, right? Because everything's boring now. So then he starts talking about jumping off the building, off from the roof, and he's like, because she won't believe what he's saying when he tells her he's immortal, and he's like, "Oh, there's no thrills. I need to figure out a way to find thrills." And then then he starts talking about jumping off the building, and he's like, "Well, I know what I'll do. I'll jump off the building. Then you'll believe me, and I'll get to feel what it's like for people who are going to commit suicide and they jump off a roof and stuff." So he goes up to the roof, he looks down, he starts thinking about it, and his wife comes up and she starts arguing with him, like, "Please don't do it." She doesn't believe that he's immortal, obviously. That she's like begging him not to do it, like, "Please, please." But in trying to stop him, she accidentally falls off the roof herself and dies. And this is where you truly find out that this guy's a complete asshole because he doesn't have any remorse about his wife dying. He looks down and he's like, "I wonder how that felt while she was falling." And then he just kind of shrugs and goes back downstairs. So he had no remorse or any kind of feelings about his wife dying. His wife fell off the building and died, and his only thought was, "I wonder how it felt while she was falling down." Like, he didn't care about anything else about that. So he goes downstairs, he thinks it's kind of funny, and, he's tried everything, so now he wants to try something new. So he goes downstairs, and he calls the police, and he says, "Yeah, I need officers to come here right away, as soon as possible." And, he's very casual talking, and then I'm guessing they ask, like, "Oh, what happened?" He's like, "Oh, I killed my wife. I threw her off the building."
Could you come over here right away, please? No trouble. I just killed my wife.
And I'm going to need you guys to come over here and arrest me and sentence me to death, basically, right? So, yeah, he gets arrested. He goes to jail. He's talking to his lawyer. It, like, skips to a part where he's talking to his lawyer. And his lawyer is like, "Man, you're like the roughest case I ever had. Most criminals are trying to not get the death sentence. You're here doing everything possible to get the death sentence, to get the electric chair." He's like, "You're aware the state has the electric chair, right? Like, if you're found guilty, there's a possibility you're going to get electrocuted." And, and he says something like, if they electrocute me, all they're going to get is an astounding electric bill. So then, the lawyer's baffled. He's trying to get him life in prison and not the death sentence. He's trying to get the death sentence. He's like, "Yeah, he wants to ride the electric chair because he thinks that might be a thrill. So he knows he won't die, but he thinks that maybe being electrocuted would be fun or something. He's, like I said, he keeps escalating the danger of everything he does because it keeps getting more and more boring. So when he finally gets to prison, not prison, so he finally gets to court, it's at the end of the trial, and you find out the judge doesn't sentence him to life to execution. He sentences him to life imprisonment with no possibility of parole, right? So now that he's like, "Oh fuck," so now he's basically talking about shit getting boring because there's no thrills. He's going to spend the rest of his life in prison, and he doesn't die, so that this could be thousands of years. I don't think they gave him a set amount of years. It's just straight up life in prison for whenever he dies, so he could spend thousands of years in prison and never get out, right? Then so he gets you see him in his prison all all like depressed now, not knowing what to do. And then you see the cop that's watching over him. He's still in his holding cell, so the cop comes over to tell him, "Well, tomorrow we're gonna move you to, we're gonna move you to prison, where you're gonna spend the rest of your life." And he was like, "Man, you're lucky, man. For what you did, most people would have gotten the electric chair. You sure got off lucky, spending life in prison." He's like, "Look at it this way. What's life? Another. The dude's already like in his 50s, so he's like, what's life? Another 20, 30 years? Yeah, you can do that with your eyes closed. That's no problem." And then he walks away. And then after he walks away, then Mr. Cadwallader comes back, the devil himself, and he's like, "Hey, so let me guess now. You want to call off your contract? You want to end your immortality, right?" And yeah, so basically, after discovering he was going to spend life in prison, he decides to take it back and say, "Yeah, actually, death is better than this, and I'd rather take death." So he's like, "Yeah, so then you'll face death, at the hands of a heart attack, and he snaps his hands, and the guy snaps his fingers, and the guy has a heart attack in his bed, flops over, the cop comes, and he's like, "Oh shit, call an ambulance, this guy just dropped dead." And yeah, that's the end of the story. I mean, it's not a great story. It's done kind of whimsically, which does make it a little better. But I'm not saying it's a bad episode. I think it's enjoyable, but I'm just saying in comparison to the other episodes where there's so many good Twilight Zone episodes, this is one of the lesser ones. And the first season has a few of the lesser ones. I think Twilight Zone started getting really good around the second season, where like every episode was pretty damn good. The first season, I think they were still catching their groove, and a lot of the episodes in this season aren't as great as like the second and third season. But in the end, this story, it's a good story. It's just not so deep. It's not great. You could find way better Twilight Zone episodes. But yeah, I think a lot of this story, it's you hear a lot in Twilight Zone, is repeated a lot, is like, careful what you wish for. It's a cliche we've heard a million times, but basically he wished for immortality, right? And the way he got it and what he did with it went completely wrong, and he didn't last more than like a day or two with immortality. But also the other thing, like, without death, where are the thrills? Where's the fun? You know what I'm saying? The risks. There's no risk. That adds to the story. That's part of the story too, because like as he keeps trying to kill himself, he starts realizing he doesn't enjoy anything, because there's no danger in anything. There's no risk in anything. And that's true too. And but also what led him to all of this, which is I think is the most important part of this story, is his fear of death. And people who fear death so much will do crazy things, because they're so afraid of it. This guy was so afraid of death that he thought he was constantly dying, and then started living as a hypochondriac because he constantly thought he was dying. He always thought he was sick all the time, when he wasn't. He was perfectly healthy, but he was spending all of his time, all of his life, basically, or from whenever he started acting this way, in a bed, being catered to by his wife, who is an enabler, really, right? But she's catering to him because he thinks he's dying. He thinks he's sick when he's not. He's just fucking a dude who's scared to die. Then he makes this deal with the devil to live forever without thinking of consequence. Well, I mean, I don't believe in like souls and stuff like that, but he sold his soul, which means he's probably going to hell, right? Like right off the bat, he after he dies, he's probably going to hell. So he traded all of that eternity in heaven or hell for immortality in earth, without thinking of how it can go bad, without thinking of the consequence. And then he starts trying to kill himself in ways without thinking of consequence either. He could be hurting other people. I mean, you jump in front of a bus, the bus swerves, he could kill a bunch of people on the sidewalk. He could jump in front of a train short stops and derails, he can kill a bunch of people. Jump off a building, you can land on people. He doesn't think of these consequences, he doesn't think about hurting other people, he only thinks about himself. And then as we realize later on that he doesn't even give a shit about his wife, because after his wife dies, he didn't even care about that. He thought more about the experience she experienced, the feeling she experienced as she was falling from the building, than he did about her dying, And then, like an idiot, he sends himself to prison, thinking he's going to get into the electric chair, and then doesn't get it, and has to spend life in prison, and ruined his whole entire gift of immortality. But yeah, careful what you wish for, I think, is the main thing of this, though. And not fearing death. There's a lot of episodes in this of people who, in Twilight Zone, a lot of stories from people who fear death and do really stupid things because of it, and don't experience life because of it. And yeah, this is one of those. But yeah, I think that's all I got to say about this one. Yeah, there's not much to say about that. I think I pretty much said it all. The next episode's a pretty good one. It's called The Lonely. We'll get on that. And I think I'm going to do... The new Twilight Zone show started, and there are about 3 or 4 episodes in. I watched the first 3, so I want to do something on that, but I'm not sure how I'm going to do it yet. I don't want to review each episode. I may just do one episode. I might just do one video talking about the show in general. But for that, I should wait for it to finish. So maybe I'll do... I don't know, maybe I'll do a few episodes at a time. We'll see. I'll figure it out, and maybe next week I'll get to that. I got a bunch of videos to work on recently. So, thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you next time. Peace out.